What up, YouTube? Big Lou tapping back in with what to do with Big Lou. And what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna talk about an event, actually two events that happened in boxing history that were one was proven uh, right then and there, and the other one is as how would you say it's not proven to happen right then and there, but most likely it happened by the damage that was done and what was caught the next fight that this fighter fought in. So uh, I'm gonna give you a little background on these two fighters here that were set to fight June 16th, 1983, in Madison Square Garden. It was this was a welterweight bout, and this was between Luis Resto from the Bronx, New York, originally from Puerto Rico. Uh, his record was 28-2, 28 wins, 8 losses, 2 draws, and 1 no contest, and he only had 8 knockouts, so he wasn't a big puncher. And he was raised in the Bronx, and he's born in Yucos, Puerto Rico. And here's a little background on him. In 8th grade, he elbowed his math teacher, and he was given 6 months in a rehab center for mentally disturbed. And when he got out, his uncle signed him up for boxing. And as a result of that, he was a two-time New York Golden Gloves amateur state champ in the welterweight division. He trained at the Police Athletic League's Lynch Center, and he won in 1975 and 76 at 147 pounds Golden Gloves Open Championship. Resto defeated Miguel Hernandez in the finals of the 76 New York State Golden Gloves. Resto made his pro debut on February 4th, 1977, with the win, points of defeat of Julio Chevalier. Resto scored his first pro knockout against Michael Lytle in May of '77. Resto was undefeated until his 8th pro fight when he fought Bruce Curry, which I'm pretty sure that's Donald the Cobra Curry's brother. And that was March of '78, and he lost that one. And after 29 bouts, like I said, he was 28-8-1, and then only 8 knockouts, and he was ranked 10th in the world. But out of New York City, he wasn't known. He was very unknown. Appeared to be a little light puncher, but would throw at a high level. He was a high level journeyman, and his opponent was Eddie Collins Jr. and he was 14-0. 14-0 at the time. Junior middleweight, he fought 154. He was a young, upcoming, and tough fighter. Once defeated uh, future title contender challenger Bruce Strauss. He defeated him in the 3rd round. Was felt Collins Jr. was going to be a world champ at 154. He was trained by his father, Eddie Collins Sr., since kindergarten. Eddie Sr. was a pro welterweight and had once fought for a world championship against Curtis Coates. Collins Jr. started out at 147 like his pops. Okay, so like I said, the fight was June 16th of '83 in Madison Square Garden, New York. So Luis Resto is pretty much the home fighter, being from New York, from the Bronx. And he literally gave this kid a beating. I mean, he beat him from round 1 all the way to the very last round. And Eddie Collins Jr. was black and blue, swelled up, eyes shut, and he didn't look like the same person. And like I said, from the beginning round to the last round, this Resto was, I mean, just he had a ton of energy and was constantly throwing a high volume of punches. And it was said that Eddie, well, not as it was said, but Eddie Collins had never been whooped like that. He had a short career thus far, but he was, like I said, he never nothing like that. And at the end of the fight, uh, Oh, and let me hold on. Let me back up a little bit. So his trainer was Panama Lewis, Carlos Lewis, aka Panama, and he's been a very controversial character. Um, he had Aaron Pryor in his stable, and when Aaron Pryor fought Alexis Aguayo, excuse me, it was said that the Hawk, Aaron Pryor, same thing with him. He was, I mean, from round 1 to round 15. Actually, it stopped in the 14th round, but this guy was throwing punches on just nonstop, throwing. And at one point, I believe it was the 12th round, maybe the 13th round, he asked the assistant in the corner for the bottle, and he handed him a bottle, and Panama Lewis says, no, not that one, the other one, the one that I mixed. Okay, keep that in mind. It was said that he was putting asthma type medication, chopping them up, pills, and putting it in the water, and the guys would drink it, and it would open up their lungs, and pretty much give them a fresh, second wind, that type of things, where they were just they could just keep coming with it. If you're taking stuff like that, and the other guy's just fighting naturally, title fights back then were 15 rounds. So keep that in mind. So after the fight in June of '83, Collins versus Resto, Eddie Collins Sr. walks over to Resto's side, where they're at, and he goes to shake his hand and tell him good fight or whatever he went. I don't know if he went over there even to say that or if he was going over there to investigate or whatever. But he went over there nonetheless. He grabbed his hand and he felt that the glove was literally just a bare hand and a glove with no padding, no nothing. So he started yelling like, I don't know if he was yelling for the ref, the judges, or if the athletic commissioner, the commissioner of the New York State Athletic Commission, the commissioner was there, or the deputy commissioner, but he was yelling for somebody, and he was holding on to his hand. And at that same time, Resto's yelling for Panama, and he busted. You know what I mean? He didn't know what to do. He was busted, and these guys, the gloves ended up getting confiscated, and by the New York State Athletic Commission for pending investigation and further investigation, and it was said that over an ounce of padding was taken out of both gloves, and these guys end up going to prison. These guys end up getting charged with I got it written down. Let me tell you exactly what the charge is so I don't get it confused. So there was a documentary done about it, and I seen this documentary. It was called Assault in the Ring, and it was many years later. I think it was '07. So you're talking like 20 years later, 21 years later, or 24 years later, excuse me. And Resto's still denying anything, knowing anything. And then they even go to Florida to go talk to Panama, and he goes into Panama Lewis's gym. Is like, hey Panama, what'd you put in the? What'd you do? What'd you put in the? And he's playing dumb, and Panama's like, what? What are you talking about? He's playing that number. But so let me tell you what happened. So they took the gloves. Okay, so I already said about the pad, and then they found also there was a chalk-like substance that was replaced, that was in the gloves, replaced the padding or something like that. The kid took way too much punishment. Collins Jr. had sustained both eyes swollen shut by a light puncher journeyman. You know what I mean? So that was weird. People were thinking like, what's going on with this? Collins Jr. suffered a torn iris and permanently blurred vision, ending his career. And then ultimately, sadly, he would pass away. Only a few months later, he drove his car into a culvert while drinking. Some commenters have speculated that the loss of his livelihood drove him into a downward spiral full of depression. Collins Sr. has since speculated that his son committed suicide, purposely doing that. And then after months of investigation, the New York State Athletic Commission determined that Resto's trainer, Panama Lewis, had removed the padding from Resto's gloves, and Resto should have known it. It was illegal for Panama Lewis to have, in fact, removed the padding from the gloves. And in '86, Panama Lewis and Resto were put on trial and found guilty of, okay, so here's the charges: assault, criminal possession of a weapon, Resto's hands, and conspiracy. Prosecutors said there's no way Resto couldn't have known that his gloves were tampered with and illegal, and it amounted to the 10-round assault, which Resto was charged for. It was also argued that a third party was involved via a large amount of money betted on Resto to win, and it was planned, discussed, and prearranged just prior to the fight. Resto was given 2.5 years in prison and banned from boxing, as well as Panama Lewis. After 15 years, Resto ended up getting a job in a boxing gym where he was living at, and then they ended up giving him a license to be a cornerman. Eventually, after 15-20 years of pleading. So, like I said, Resto had been denying it for nearly 25 years. The knowledge of Lewis removing the padding, and that Lewis even, and then he finally admitted it, and he also admitted that Lewis soaked his hand wraps in a plaster of Paris, and that he was also aware, of the money. So he finally came clean. And the jacked up part about this is that his own kids, they were living in Virginia now, his own kids even believed him that he didn't do this. So it was a lot. The dude was trying to keep the street code or not saying anything, and he was trying to, protect his image and his kid's image, but he was involved with this, and it was a tragedy that happened, with this kid and what they were involved with by doing this to the gloves. By him putting the plaster of Paris, this allowed his hand wraps to turn into like a plaster cast, similar to those used when it broke, for broken bones, which greatly and illegally increased Resto's punching power. And this plaster cast helped Collins Jr. to swell up bad, and tear his iris and close up his eyes. And Resto disclosed that Panama would break up pills that were used for asthma and pour it into the water bottles to help open up Resto's lungs, and have the exact way Resto was for the Collins fight, throwing the same amount of volume punches in the 10th round as in the early rounds. Again, it was a shameful display of coward, just disgusting behavior by these clowns for doing this. You know what I mean? Okay, so let's see. So Panama Lewis ended up getting 6 years, and I didn't know, as I was looking at some details about this situation. I found out that Panama Lewis passed away in September of 2020. I wasn't aware he passed. A little bit of background on him is he was a disciple of trainer Chicky Ferrara, who was Roberto Duran's cornerman. And during the early 80s, Panama Lewis was considered one of the best trainers at the time, along with Lou Duva and Emmanuel Stewart. Like I had mentioned earlier, his most notable fighter was Aaron Pryor. So back to Lewis. They gave him 6 years in prison, and they gave him 6 years in 1986, and he was released sometime in 1990. So he did 4 on the 6, a little over 4 or whatever. And he proclaimed, as far as my knowledge, he's proclaimed his innocence all along to his dying day. And he's still up to his dying day, as far as I know, because that documentary was 2008 or 2007. He was still banned from boxing. And then he was training Zab Judah. I want to say it was the Danny Garcia fight. I could be wrong about that one. But Lewis was still training Zab Judah, but he couldn't go into the arena during the fights. So he would train him all the way up until the day of the fight, and then he was not in his corner no more. Um, let's see. Yeah, so during all this, so in the filming of the Assault in the Ring, the producer director was Eric Darth, and as Darth was talking to Panama Lewis had no problem throwing Artie Curley under the bus, saying that Artie Curley had wrapped Luis Resto's hands up, and if Curley was alive today, that all this would have never, it wouldn't have happened because he would have said that he wrapped his hands. But the guy Artie Curley already passed, so of course he had no problem throwing his name under the bus. You know what I mean? Uh, so they were both found guilty in '86, like I had mentioned, from a 1983 fight, and so this guy ends up going. Luis Resto ends up going to Tennessee. He goes to the wife at the time of Eddie Collins. He goes to the Collins home. He even goes to Collins' gravesite, and he apologizes to him and says he's sorry for what he did to him. You know what I mean? He finally came clean, and he told the truth. You know, I don't know what the man's doing now this day. Like I said, that documentary was 2007, 2008. Who knows what he could be doing? You know what I mean? But anyways, it's one of the most horrible, terriblest acts of unsportsmanlike, just downright evil acts that have ever been done in boxing. You know what I mean? It's one thing you're taking out the padding, okay, so that's making your fist, more bare, but then you're putting a substance in there that this plaster of Paris that gets hard as it gets wet, it gets harder, and so it's like having a, like a somewhat of a, like rock kind of, and you're hitting somebody over and over again, and you're also taking stuff that you shouldn't be drinking that's putting you even more over, to be unnatural. So it's basically you're trying to kill this guy. That's exactly what you're doing. You're trying to kill this guy in the ring, and unfortunately, he didn't die in the ring, but he ended up dying a few months later because he got beat so bad that it changed his life forever, and he ended up, feeling down and out and depressed, and mental health's real, people, so getting depressed like that and drinking and driving and just basically not caring about your life because you feel like you're not worth nothing no more, your livelihood, that's your job, boxing, that's all you knew, and now you can't do it because you can't see normal no more because of beating that you took of some cheaters, some straight cheaters, and it sucked, it straight sucked, and unfortunately it happened, I wish it didn't happen, and it is what it is, it's already done, over and done with, and so that was the first one. The second one is about July 26, 2008 in MGM Grand in Las Vegas, Nevada. The fight was billed as The Battle. It was Miguel Cotto, who was 32-0 at the time with 26 knockouts out of Caguas, Puerto Rico, and he was a WBA welterweight and the Ring Magazine champ, and he was ranked 6th for pound, and he was going up against Antonio Margarito, the Tijuana Tornado from Tijuana, Mexico. He was 36-5 with 26 knockouts, and he was the former IBF and WBO welterweight, and Ring Magazine ranked at number 4, had him ranked at number 4 at the time, and it was a good fight. All the way, the fight was a good fight. Sometime I don't remember exactly when, but sometime later in the rounds, Margarito started gaining momentum and taking some, giving Cotto some big shots, and it ended up turning out towards the end, more towards the end that, he was beating him. I mean, his face was swelled up real bad, and he was just, you can tell that Miguel Cotto didn't want to get hit no more by this guy. That's how much the impression, his power, he was feeling it. And I remember one time, I think it was the 10th round, he got dropped. And he got dropped and he got back up and he fell back down. He even I want to say he took a knee even before he got hit again. And then eventually hit Miguel Cotto's uncle, which was his trainer at the time, threw the towel in. I believe it was the 10th round. Yeah, 10th or 11th round, excuse me. At 2:05 of the round, 11th round, he threw the towel and stopped it. And obviously this was Miguel Cotto's first loss. I believe he was supposed to get a De La Hoya fight, a big fight, big time money with De La Hoya. Like I mentioned earlier, he was ranked 6th pound for pound. Now he lost, so that was gonna move him perhaps maybe out of the top 10 pound for pound. But definitely he was gonna lose that number 6 spot and go towards the negative more. He wasn't gonna go positive, with the loss. Like I said, he lost the big fight coming up. It was supposed to be with De La Hoya, and he just dropped his titles, the Ring Magazine title and the WBA welterweight title. And Margarito now is the champ, and Margarito is gonna go fight Shane Mosley now, Sugar Shane Mosley. And this is where I mentioned earlier where one time it was caught with the hand in the cookie jar and the other time it wasn't, but it's 100. It's assumed that presumed that he was guilty as well because of what happened, how Cotto looked from the beating he took, and then also how his behavior when you can tell he didn't want to get hit again, no more by the guy, and then also after all this came about, when they were watching the video and tape of that fight afterwards with Cotto and Margarito. Before the second fight, Max Kellerman has this thing where he sits down with the fighters and they talk shit, however they're gonna talk. And Cotto was asking Margarito in Spanish. He was, well, what is that? Derrota, the gauze. He had gauze and different things like hanging from his gloves, and then you can see where his glove is, where his hand wrap. You can see like something white there. And of course Margarito's playing stupid. So, anyways. Naseem Richardson, which is Sugar Shane Mosley's head trainer, is in Margarito's dressing room as his hands are getting wrapped. And he notices something not right. And when he investigated further, this guy had, was it plaster too? I'm not sure. Let me see. He noticed a plaster-like substance on illegal pads were found on Margarito's hand wraps. And then, like I said, when Cotto and Margarito were sitting down talking about the second fight they were going to fight, before going in, he was asking him questions like, what is this? Why is that? And he even asked Max. He goes, Max, all your years in boxing, you ever seen this? You ever seen that? Max said no. And so Margarito got busted. So, and not only my opinion, many people's opinion, it's just he didn't get caught the fight before with Cotto. The fact that he had stuff, plaster, and illegal stuff on his hand wraps, that, when this stuff gets wet, the more it gets wet, the harder it gets. That's why the punches weren't hitting Miguel Cotto so much in the early rounds. It caught up to him later because after all the sweating and all that stuff got hard. You can tell the way his face looked, how he was swollen, his mouth was bleeding. You can tell that, and then like the way he was acting when he got hit. The one time he got dropped and then like he took a knee before he even get hit again because it was hurting, it was hurting. It wasn't natural. Again, a coward motherfucker, cheating, I mean, why are you doing that? You're trying to hurt him. I mean, there's no other explanation.